Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to Where the Rose Rises with me, your host, Eileen Kerlin Walsh. Our guest today, Mark Levy, works deeply in a field of ever increasing need for our aging population, and that is senior living solutions. Mark was born and raised here in the south suburbs of Chicago. He worked for many years as vice president of operations for a large company supervising over 130 employees. However, in 2009, Mark suffered a stroke at the age of 47. While he was fortunate to recover without any long-term effects, his life was forever changed and shaped by those events. After navigating the medical world, looking for solutions for himself, he developed a new perspective on the obstacles that seemed so firmly in place and so unnecessary. And he came away with an understanding of the value of an experienced advocate working on your behalf. With a new purpose, Mark transitioned to the senior care industry, trained with a company that specialized in assisting seniors and their families. Mark opened his office in the south suburbs, where he also lives with his wife and his 17-year-old son. Mark has dedicated the past 14 years of his life helping seniors and their families find not just living solutions as they go through their later decades, but the peace of mind they so richly deserve. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thanks for having me.
And Mark is returning to our show. He was with us about 7-8 years ago, and we're going to take a look at everything that's been happening in the industry since. But we're just going to start, Mark, with you reminding us what it was about that personal experience that informed your decisions going forward and got you involved in the world of senior solutions.
Yeah, certainly. So it's not lost on me that I'm very fortunate to have come through what I came through, having a stroke, and 16 years later being fairly healthy. You know, I'm one of the fortunate ones. And so in the beginning, to put it mildly, I viewed it as a setback, let's say. But over time, it became clear to me that it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because after that, within a couple of years, I changed roles in what I did for a living and transitioned to what I'm doing now, helping people. And I think that going through what I went through helps me connect with people better, because I can relate to, I know how having a health concern and a health change affects not only the body, but it affects your mind and your spirit as well.
Yeah.
And so when people are overwhelmed and they're just at all-time lows, I feel like I can, on some level, connect with them. And by being able to bring some clarity and talking about the situation and give them, some good potential options, I can see the relief that they feel, which is a great feeling for me to know that I can make some difference in helping people in whatever small way I'm able to do that.
Oh, absolutely, Mark. And viewers, I can tell you, I've worked with Mark over the years. I've seen firsthand him stepping in to help with families, and he is just a paragon of compassion and love and a wonderful resource.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, Mark, could you walk us through the types of services you offer for seniors and their families?
Sure, absolutely. So it's really twofold. A lot of people who want to stay at home, I help them with that, with resources to make that happen, or community-based solutions, which consist of assisted living, memory care solutions, communities, and skilled nursing. Usually it's an event that takes place, that triggers somebody going to a hospital or a rehab center. And then upon discharge, their needs all of a sudden may be different than they were prior to the event. And so they need some additional resources. And many times people just don't know where to turn or what's even available to them. So that's where I come in. Many times I'm being referred to them from social workers within a hospital setting or a rehab setting or a doctor's office. And, we'll talk through their specific situation so they get a better understanding as to if it's home care, should it be, if they have minimal needs, maybe an hourly come and go service. Some people may qualify for free services through senior services, and then other people may get some additional funds through the VA if they were a veteran or even the spouse of a veteran. And so we talk about that, and then I just help them through the entire process. Yeah. And from a community, I think it's important to note that families never pay me anything for my services. If somebody ends up going to a private pay, assisted living or memory care at some point, that community will just pay my fee directly. Otherwise, I do a lot of work pro bono, especially if it's Medicaid related. But it comes with the territory, and being in the south suburbs, there's people that, regardless of your income, your needs are the same. You still want the best for your family, and I do whatever I can to help people.
Absolutely, Mark. And that is where I have been so impressed that I know that I can call you to come help a family who may not be able to afford the costs of those private facilities, which, as we know now, are just increasingly out of reach. So was it Zig Ziglar who said, you get what you want when you help enough other people get what they want? So that's always touched me deeply, that you will help families pro bono, even if it's not leading to where you would get paid for that service. How about some of the common challenges that families face when they're navigating the senior care options, and what are your solutions to those obstacles?
Sure. I think a lot of times people just don't know how to get started. The old saying, you don't know what you don't know, and it's so true. And so, my job, I think, is once I get involved and I can deal with their specific situation, because everyone's situation is a little bit different. Their finances may be different, their needs may be different. And I think once they get together with me and they understand that I bring some clarity to the situation of, what makes sense for their situation, what that entails, I think it's a lot easier for them to kind of wrap their arms around picking a solution when they know what their options are, right? Because it's so much easier when you're aware of what's out there. And many times, people, even other family members and friends, try to do their best, to help people, I think, but many times they are not aware of the changes that have taken place in the industry. So you may end up with a friend or a family member that has a loved one that went to a specific community, and it may have been even a year ago. And that community could have been through a change of ownership in the last year, And so many times I'll see, even on social media posts, because let's face it, in the world that we live in, everyone's on social media these days. I'm not. I don't make any comments on social media because half the people, no matter what you say, are going to disagree with you, and the other half, usually will agree with you. And so I kind of stay out of those conversations. I deal directly with families, but I do read what people say, and many times you hear people saying, oh, my dad or my mom was at a facility 5 years ago and it was wonderful. Well, there's been 3 different owners since they were there. And so they're really they're not aware of all the changes that are taking place. And I have a tendency to keep my ear to the ground. That's the industry I work in. And so I think being able to advise people based on their specific needs and also trying to work within their financial restraints, it allows me to identify true options that make sense for them.
Yeah. Could you perhaps give us a little primer on the terms that we hear bandied about when it comes to senior care and living? What's the difference between assisted living, independent living, memory care, and then maybe the difference when it comes to home care? We hear about home help and medical help. Could you just give us a little bit of a 101?
Okay, sure. So we'll start with home care. So there's a term in the industry called home health, and there's a term in the industry called home care. To most people, they sound like exactly the same thing. But home health, the health piece of it, is covered under Medicare Part B, typically, okay? So think of health and healthcare and Medicare. With home health, that's where you get your therapy services in the home. So somebody coming out through a home health company, possibly a couple times a week for maybe an hour to do additional therapy in a home setting. And usually there's a nurse associated with the case and a social worker as well. Home care is usually a private pay solution unless somebody is of low income or asset and they qualify for something through senior services for free. Okay. Assisted living is where you go into a community setting, you have your own apartment, you're getting assistance with your activities of daily living. They have nurses that are there, they have CNAs that are there. So you don't always have to have somebody in your apartment. You have care available when you need it. So you still have that independent ability of being in your own apartment, going down for meals, socializing, partaking in the activities in the communities at your leisure. If you want to stay in your apartment, you stay in your apartment. If you want to participate in activities, you participate. So you're in control. But you know that you have access to all the health care that you need and assistance that you need, whether it's mobility issues, getting in and out of bed, getting on and off a toilet, getting dressed in the morning, grooming, bathing, incontinent care, even people that have to wear adult diapers and need help with cleaning themselves up and changing. All of that can all be done within that assisted living setting. Independent living is more for those people that are truly independent and can do most things on their own but want to get away from a home setting. There are a couple facilities that offer independent living with additional services so that you can get a little bit of both. You get that independent lifestyle, but if you need a little help, they have sometimes a third-party company in the building that will help provide that care at a cost, an additional cost. But that's scheduled care versus assisted living. It can be on-demand care. I mean, they usually put a healthcare plan together, even in assisted living. But if something comes up, you push a button, you pull a cord, and somebody comes to help you. Memory care, unfortunately, is something that probably everybody knows somebody that is suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, and it's sad. My own mother, we lost my mother to dementia, and it's a very difficult but real situation that we're all faced with nowadays. Yeah. And even being in the industry, my mom was out of state, but it was a situation where, I'm a big advocate of people being able to be as independent as they can for as long as they can. And so, you may have someone that physically is in great shape, but cognitively their mind's gone, and so sometimes they're not safe being home, especially if they live alone, because they can, hallucinate. They can go out the front door and they're walking to their kid's house because they think that they're supposed to attend a dinner or whatever, and they're walking down a busy street and the police are picking them up because they're confused and disorientated, and they, have to many times find who they belong to, the family, and there has to be some type of intervention. And so many people will start in the home in those type of cases and get the extra support, but it's really hard. You have to get your arms around the medication management side of things, because someone cognitively impaired doesn't have the ability to manage their meds typically to the extent that they need to be managed. And that's a leading reason why people end up in the hospital, due to mismanagement of medications, not eating, and things of that nature. And so a true memory care community is offering a secured environment where you're not able to just walk out the door. So if somebody was in elopement risk, that is mitigated. They have programming that's geared towards people that have cognitive impairment. And then the caregivers are all versed in dealing with and redirecting people. And so my mom started out in assisted living and eventually went to memory care. And as difficult as it was, because we all think that, the more we hold on, the better we're doing for our loved one. And I found out firsthand that as soon as my mom went into the memory care side of the building, she was up every morning, she was dressed, she was eating all her meals. I mean, she had lost 12 pounds in assisted living because it's a different approach. They feel like if you're in assisted living, you can make your own decisions. So if they come in and say it's time to go eat, and you say I just ate, you may get a caregiver that says okay, or it's time to take a shower. I already took one, even though you didn't.
Yeah.
They take you at your word. And so the structure of a memory care for someone cognitively affected, is usually, not always, but usually where many people end up.
So Mark, you do have this depth of knowledge, and as you said, it's a fast-flowing stream. It's ever-changing. How do you stay connected to the resources and the best solutions for our families?
Yeah, well, I stay highly connected in the industry. I serve on a board of Continuity of Care, a local chapter, which is made up of people from within the healthcare industry, all different facets. I'm a member of a couple other chapters. I also go to many networking meetings, and daily I'm talking to people throughout the industry, because people may call me, and I mean, you and I had even met years ago through networking events, and I'm not an attorney, but people will call me, and sometimes they don't even call me for legal advice. It's just through the process of talking to them, I realize that they need some other specialties, and I refer out to people. I can't tell you how many people I've referred out for various external needs, even behavioral health for people that maybe need to look at a behavioral health option for a week or two to see if they can get their loved one some help.
So why don't you tell us a couple of stories? Because I know you have your war stories. Maybe a couple of stories that would give an example of what you do and how you help our aging seniors in the community.
Okay. Well, I've met a lot of amazing people over the years that I've been doing this. And, a lot of interesting people, and they're dealing with significant issues many of the times, right? So you take the good with the bad, and I always try to keep a level head and just try to do the best I can. There's one woman who called me, and she had left a message for me, and I called her back. And just for the sake of conversation, I'm not going to use her real name, but let's say her name was Barb Jones, okay? So I called back, and I said, "Hi, Barb, this is Mark Levy. I'm returning your phone call." And she's like, "Please call me Mrs. Jones," right off the bat, instead of Barb. I said, okay. And so that's how our conversation started. And she had a lot of requirements, and she wanted me to help her on a lot of fronts. And she didn't have financial means to do a lot of the things that she wanted to do. And so we talked through the process, and we've had many phone calls since the initial phone call. But why I remember her is because she talked to me one time and said at the very end, "When I first talked to you, Mark, I told you, call me Mrs. Jones, and you could have very easily said, okay, please call me Mr. Levy, but you didn't do that to me." And, that thought did cross my mind, actually, at the time it happened. But I knew that, it's just not the right thing to do, right? And she was having a difficult time. And she said, "I have a set of rosary beads that were blessed, and I would like to send those to you if you would like to have them." I said, "I would love to have them." And she did send them to me. And that's why I remember the story. It's a case that was pro bono, everything I did for her. And it's interesting because a lot of the people I remember, that's the case, right? It's those people that have very high needs, but they don't have the means. But they have to be very resourceful, because people who have money, they have options. And people that don't, it's very hard to get people to return phone calls, these days, unfortunately. And so I knew I made a difference, and she was appreciative at the end, even though it started out not great.
Yeah.
It ended up, I think, by biting my tongue in the beginning and just doing what I knew was right, made her feel better, and I felt better at the end as well.
And you hung in there. You stayed with her regardless of the...
And then recently I was called into a hospital rehab setting with a gentleman who wasn't doing well, and he had cancer, and he lived alone. He lived in his childhood home that he grew up in. And he has a girlfriend who lives in her home next door, which is really interesting. And she has some cognitive impairment, but she's living alone. And so I got to know him, and I was helping him because he was going to discharge and he couldn't go home. And so I got him I talked to him, and he was open to assisted living. And then his girlfriend wanted to go to assisted living. And so neither one of them has any adult children at all, not married. They have each other, one of them being compromised. He's an amazing, amazing person. I mean, he's not in great health, and you can tell that they adore each other. And so they're both in assisted living. They have a room next to each other because she didn't think it was appropriate, since they're not married, even though they're in their 70s, to live in the same room.
Oh.
But anytime I go to visit, they're always in the same room, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's just great to see how they interact with each other. And I've been there. They have my cell phone number, and they have a special spot in my heart, you know. And so I was there not that long ago. They each wanted a cell phone, and something that seems simple, like to call and set it up. Well, as soon as they started asking them for previous passcodes on, you know, it took hours. Okay,
Yeah.
But they're just good people, you know. And I know that. I don't know how long he'll be with us, because, you know, he's got cancer pretty bad, and he lives for her, you can tell. And because he's right next door, she's able to be in assisted living because he's helping her, you know, looking in on her all the time, and they're going to meals together. I would suspect that, you know, when he's gone, that she'll have to move into the memory care side, because she won't have that enough attention, because what he's providing is constant, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, those are the kinds of stories that I remember and keep you going. And one last one, there's a gentleman, every time I would talk to him, and I just got a call from his nephew after hours yesterday, because he's in the hospital. I've been talking to him for years now. His wife has dementia, and he is the most doting husband. And every time I talk to him, I always end the call feeling like he's the type of guy that makes you feel like you can be a better man. You know what I mean? Just because
That's so great.
I almost feel guilty on one side. I'm like, wow, like, what is wrong with me that I don't have, you know, don't feel like I have that same conviction as he does, you know, with
Well,
you know what I mean? But
let me say, Mark, from hearing your stories, I think you do have some marvelous qualities, and I think you're doing exactly what you were meant to do. You're exactly in the right place at the right time. So that kind of leads to my question a little bit more philosophically. So you are seeing people at a very vulnerable, sensitive, difficult time of their life. You're seeing the families handle those difficulties in different ways. So how are we doing as a society? How are we when it comes to taking care of each other? Are we doing a good job? Could we do better? What's your thoughts?
I see the whole gamut, you know, good, the bad, the ugly. You have families that are amazing, you know, and a lot of it, there's cultural differences too. So you have some families where they believe in just taking their loved ones in, right? They would never ever place them anywhere, because that's the way they were brought up. That's what they do in their culture, and I could certainly appreciate that, right? But sometimes situations change, and they can become overwhelming, and sometimes you have to think outside the box, you know. And so even though they want to do that, and so many people say, I always promise my loved one I would never place them anywhere. And it's like, well, you didn't know at the time that this was going to be the situation. And I'm sure that if they know you have their best interest in mind, and you would never do anything that you didn't feel was in their best interest. And so I see a lot of good people that are on the right track, and then I see a lot of family dynamics, you know, which can be frustrating at times too, especially if people, and you're an attorney, and you see people that when finances come into play, they don't always have, you know, the senior in mind as to what's truly best for them. And those are tough, because my goal is not to help a family try to figure out how they can take mom or dad's money, you know. And so those are difficult situations. But I think overall, you know, there are times when maybe some kids, adult children, didn't have the best childhood. They didn't grow up in a loving home. And I've seen people that, despite that, have continued to take abuse and keep going and going and going because they know that they feel better doing it, you know. And I've seen others that are like, you know, they haven't been in my life for 20 years and now I'm supposed to do all this. It's too much for me. So, and it's understandable. So, I mean, I wish it was all positive and rosy stories, but life isn't that way. You know, there's the good and the bad, but I think overall, I mean, I think we have a tendency to focus on the negative. Certainly, the majority is good. You know.
We'll stop right there.
Okay.
The majority is good. For all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it still is a beautiful world. And people like you truly in this difficult area are making it even more beautiful, Mark. I've watched you truly over the years, and your heart is, you're always leading with your heart, not your profits, which I know is why you've done so well. Last couple questions.
Okay.
So do you have any words that you live by? Anything maybe your grandparents said, or a favorite quote, poem, Bible verse?
I'm not known as a poet, I'll tell you that, but I like humor. I'm a sarcastic person, you know, when I let my hair down and just am having fun. And somebody once said to me, and I remember it because it was funny, you know, don't take life too serious because at the end we all die anyways.
We're not getting out of it alive.
Right.
Yeah.
And I need to actually live by that more because, you know, sometimes it's hard not to take things overly serious, you know, because you can be consumed by it. But I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, a lot to be said about a little levity. All right, Mark, so if any of our viewers wanted to get a hold of you, had some questions for you, what's the best way to reach you?
Probably by calling. My office number is 708-328-3600. And I think they're going to put up, you know, my information with an email address. So if you use my email, just make sure that you notice that solutions on Senior Solutions is plural, and there's a numeric number 1 after it. So, but in doubt, just call me. And if you get my voicemail, I will call you back. And if, God forbid, you don't get a call back, that means something went wrong because I always call people back.
I guarantee that is true. Mark also personally always answers his cell phone and he always calls back. So wonderful resource if you have any questions. Many of us are in that stage where we have the aging parent or spouse. We need help. We need to know what to do first, and Mark is a great call to make. So thank you, viewers, for watching, and I will see you next time on Where the Road Rises. Thanks and bye.